Hello and welcome to How Money Really Works. I'm Peter,
I'm Stephen.
and this is a show about the gap between the headlines you see in the news and what actually happens to people's money afterwards. Every single week, it seems there's another major news story. The markets move, politicians talk, and a few weeks or even months later, well, it ends up showing up in people's wages, their bills, their taxes, their pensions, even their savings.
Now, we're not here to give advice or make predictions, and this is absolutely not financial advice. If you want to make any decisions based on what you do here today, please speak to a financial advisor first. You can, of course, talk to me at Stephen Holt Wealth Management. The details on how to do that will come later on, are in the show notes.
Yes. Later, Stephen, we will get round to your business. This week, though, we're starting off, well, where else? But with global politics and oil, we will bring it home to the UK a little later and look at what's still hanging over from the big budget at the end of last year and what's quietly changing in personal finances right now. But yeah, Venezuela, Greenland, oil, the lot of it, that's the only place to start. As we're speaking to you right now, it's just been announced that the United States has seized, claimed, abducted, kidnapped, however you do it, with an oil tanker in the Atlantic. Now, this was a vessel that had been, it was a Venezuelan vessel that had snuck through the blockade that they have in there. It then registered itself or flagged itself as Russian in an attempt to evade US capture. Doesn't seem like that's happened. So, with all of this going on, with Donald Trump deciding seemingly over the weekend that he's going to enact policies that previously people had said he would never do, essentially claiming Venezuela as his own and saying Greenland is next, why does this matter to our listeners? How big are these type of stories when it comes to the finances, Stephen?
What difference did it make to personal finances? I mean, immediately, very little. I think the things that the telephone calls or some of the emails I've already had today, what should I do differently? Changes do I need to make to my portfolio? And I guess what I say is very little right now. I mean, the interesting thing, I suppose, it's counterintuitive, right? You think bad news or seemingly bad news means that prices of things would fall. Taking it back to reality to where we are now, last night, and as we are just about now, the FTSE 100 still at an all-time high. The Dow Jones, an all-time high. Funny enough, if you have shares in American oil companies, maybe they've done very, very well in the last kind of 24 to 48 hours. It's the uncertainty. It's the uncertainty that kind of people don't like. And it's further down the line, like when we see the effects to the cost of living. These are the things that we'll see much later down, how things play out.
When we're looking at the UK, of course, UK fuel and energy all priced off those global markets, not domestic supply. So, feasibly, you should see your energy costs, your fuel costs come down if more oil comes on the market. However, and this is where you're going to jump in, so jump in there. You've been obsessed with this type of oil. Go on, explain it. You've told me all about thick oil and thin oil and green oil and all kinds. Go on, explain it to the boys and girls.
Effectively, the American market, the original oil that was mined, drilled for out in California back 100 odd years ago, is very thick. Like you think crude oil is very thick, kind of gloopy stuff. And all of the refineries are set up kind of in the Gulf of Mexico, all around there. Now, in the recent past, when they reintroduced fracking, kind of the thing that we're frightened of in this country, their price of oil fell dramatically in the US. However, it's very, very thin. Go with us on this. So the thin oil isn't what they need to put into the Cadillacs and the Escalades. They've got lots of that stuff, but they actually don't have as much of the thick, gloopy crude oil that they would need. Interestingly, perhaps, which country in the world has got the greatest supply of any oil reserves and potentially the greatest supply of thick, really gloopy crude oil? Venezuela.
So we've had enough talk about whether it's a geology class or a science class or whatever it is I really need to take to know about different types of oil. But ultimately, to go back to the households and everything like that, these type of big news stories, these aren't the ones that will impact your finances tomorrow, next week, next month.
Yeah, I mean, it's like as I said, it's the uncertainty, and markets don't like uncertainty, and that's what feeds into your pension price, the value of your ISA. That's where we'll see it. It just so happens, as it stands today and yesterday, we haven't seen any huge market movements at all. That makes us think that the people who are making money kind of see this as a good thing, whether that's fantastic for Venezuela or not, up for debate.
You talked about uncertainty and markets not liking uncertainty. Now, the other major uncertainty in the world right now is, again, involving the United States, and it's about Greenland, a strategically important place, but it's a Danish place.
The way it would appear that the whole Arctic security thing seems to have gone off the agenda in the previous 15, 20 years, and they're just going, oh, by the way, we're kind of connected to Russia over there. That sounds like there's something important again. And they have a lot of those beautiful rare earths. I guess it's a lot to do with this particular administration and the America First policy. There's a whole lot of stuff changing on. However, I guess, as you're saying, it's not a new thing. It's just maybe ignored for a little bit.
But this is a podcast looking at UK finance and how the politics impacts it. We could spend ages trying to work out what Donald Trump's going to do next, and we'd never get anywhere near, I don't think. We're going to move on to the fallout still from the budget at the end of last year. What is the UK economic backdrop right now? The OBR's put out some data. What are we looking at the moment? What are people coming to you in your business right now and saying, what's the best option for me with the situation as it is right now?
Is it the third reset we've had now in 18 months from Keir Starmer? And his new mantra is, 2026, we're turning the corner, around the corner, green shoots. This is kind of what they're talking about, kind of in Prime Minister's question time today. The question, what declines? I still think people they don't believe it and they're not feeling it in their pockets. So if I was to split my client kind of sector into mum and dad, Mr. and Mrs. ISA, they're just kind of inherently concerned about feeling life's getting more expensive. How can I know I might have some savings for the future. How can I commit to doing an investment, Stephen, when we don't know what's going to happen? Now, I guess back to doing this for the last 20 odd years, the amount of times I've heard people say, well, the way the world is at the moment, son, I don't really think it's a great time. Now, you can strip that back 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 100 years. In however many years' time, GCSE history books will have the moment we're sitting in now talked about. So again, back to being dull, it's consistent. However, the question was, what are the clients saying? So I think if you split out Mr. and Mrs. ISA, they're concerned about what's happening in their pocket and whether they feel they're able to make commitments when things feel unstable. The business clients they don't really have they don't have the luxury of going, well, we'll just see how things are, and they're on a hamster wheel all the time. The stuff to do with the budget, by the way, it felt like from about the back end of the summer right up until, and I'm not quite sure it's even finished, we're just back to work after the new year, the decisions have been just put on hold. What's going to happen in the budget? Will they change things to do with inheritance tax? What will happen to business rates? What's all of the stuff when Rachel Reeves was kind of rolling the wicket there to kind of just throw things up? We might do this, we might not. Of course, she wasn't directly saying that, but the newspapers were, people like you, on their behalf. It just meant that people haven't been able to make decisions and they've just tried to put an awful lot off. Now, I guess new year, new start. I can see why they're coming with that, saying green shoots and the positivity's about to start again. I can see why they would put that angle. In reality, I'm not actually hearing people saying that. And personally, you've just got to crack on looking after yourself to a certain extent. If you're waiting for the government to make your life better, I think you'll be a long time waiting.
Yeah, I mean, we are doing a show about how politics impacts upon your life, but yeah, I would seriously not recommend waiting for a government to make a decision before you make a move. It's always best to try and get out ahead of what they're doing. But just to give the stats, what they're going to quote, and it's what the OBR have been quoting, they're saying the tax burden is going to rise from around 37% of GDP to nearly 41% by 2029, and unemployment remaining broadly flat for the next year. So you're talking about green shoots. I mean, these green shoots are very, very small, aren't they? You've got car markets, as you said, even with the international turbulence going on, very pressured households through inflation, through wages just haven't grown, through everything costs so much money, everything. So that's the backdrop really against everything that went on with the budget. What I'm wondering is, where does this leave us? What's the biggest thing that hasn't been hit on? You said that this may still be going on, as far as you understand in the news. It's certainly been knocked out of the main news bulletins by what's going on globally in the last week or so. But there must be a core story still within that budget that is not being picked on, and people are probably missing because they're understandably distracted by what on earth's Donald Trump going to do next.
I think that the thing that people are going to feel, and you don't, it's a bit like boiling a frog, right? The frog doesn't know it's boiled if it's on a cool temperature until it is boiled. Fiscal drag, right? That's not a spin-off from Strictly Come Dancing. The changes that were made in the budget around the income tax rates not changing, around about the exact figures that we have 780,000 people as of April the 6th. So let's do this slowly. Hasn't happened yet. We're in January, 4 months away. Around 800,000 people will have to pay income tax for the very first time. And that's because the rate at which you're allowed to earn up to £12,570, that hasn't changed for more than a decade. And it isn't going to change until 2031. So if your income even goes up modestly, even a state pension increase, and you earn 12,900 for the very first time ever, you're going to have to pay tax on the difference. Now, that's at the kind of extreme end of that. But there's lots of people who, whether it be the profit from the business, they've always kept it below a certain threshold, they're going to have to pay tax. That's nearly 1 million people who've never had to fill a tax return in are going to somehow have to find a way to pay tax. They don't find out about that for another year when the tax bill lands. So again, it's all, these things are happening, but you don't see them happening straight away. That's kind of what I would say is the news story. And getting ahead of that to do the stuff that we talk about in terms of tax planning and pensions, you've got to do that before it happens. You can't do it retrospectively.
But what we're seeing is that when you do this, when you move the goalposts as they have, it's a very sneaky and easy. No, sneaky might not be the word, but it's a very easy way to raise a lot of money. But it avoids them having to say, "We're putting the taxes up."
There was a whole period again, the whole episode to do about this potentially around. Well, we didn't break our manifesto pledge.
Oh yeah, I mean, look, I've watched politicians over the years tie themselves in so many knots and so much gymnastics over trying to claim they haven't broken a manifesto pledge. But I mean, there is few that I've ever come across as flagrant as what we've seen from the current British government when it comes to, I mean, look, they didn't promise any of this, but they certainly didn't. Well, what's the thing is, it's not against the law, but it's against the spirit of the law.
Yeah.
We're going to move more into the nuts and bolts of personal finance and how this is impacted by those decisions made in the budget, the fallout from it, where it's going to go, what we don't know yet. Cash ISAs are going to change. Now, these are incredibly popular. Why are these so popular? Why do they want to change them?
Well, two questions. Start with the popular, because you don't need to pay tax on any money that you make. So an allowance, to forgive, lots of people know what this is, but there'll be many people who don't. Individual savings account. So you can't have a joint one. Many Mr. and Mrs. couples say, can I put this together? No, the clue's in the letters, an individual savings account. And over the years, they've increased this allowance. And today, it's £20,000. So there's £20,000 that can be placed into a cash ISA. A cash ISA could be called a bank account that doesn't pay any tax. So the change is from 2027, if you are under the age of 65, then we'll come on to kind of the rationale as to why they're trying to do it after, because it feels unfair when I explain it like this. So from 2027, so another couple of years worth of allowances, that's going to be reduced from 20,000 to 12,000. Now, if you're over 65, so you're already retired or nearly retired, they're not messing around with that protected bracket of people who tend to get away with lots of things if they're post-state pension. So that nothing changes for them. But cash ISA, the bank account element, that's been reduced to £12,000. Now, £20,000 is the overall ISA limit, and that includes kind of the stuff that I talk about day to day, which is an investment ISA. So cash ISA, read bank account that pays no tax, gives you an interest. An investment ISA, you can have all kinds of things inside of there, but the return that you get from stocks and shares and bonds, all these different things, when they grow inside of an investment ISA, they're tax-free. So that allowance remains at £20,000. Second part of your question was why they're doing it. I don't know, actually. I mean, there was talk a couple of governments ago, I forget which prime minister, we've had a lot of them, about something called a Great British ISA. And the idea being that there would be an additional allowance to encourage people to invest into British companies. Now, that bit I could kind of understand the logic of, because in America, back to America, they've got a much bigger, much deeper culture of investing than we do. mums and dads and nanas and you must save, you must put money under the bed, put it to one side. But the idea of investing, the stuff that I talk about, always seems a bit more alien. In America, given that 60% of the world's economy, they've got things like 401ks and IRA. The money gets invested before they earn it straight into investments. So that can then boost the economy in America because you've got 300 million people putting their money into savings. The idea behind this, I believe, but it's been fudged, is, well, if we take away the ability just to hoard cash, maybe people will invest it into British companies. But they haven't put anything in place to kind of guardrails to make people do that. They haven't put anything in place to talk to companies like us to say, you must recommend this, because how on earth can they enforce me to recommend somebody to invest into Marks and Spencer's rather than Nvidia? So that's the rationale behind it. Whether that pans out or not, I don't know. So the headlines there really for the next, where are we now? You've got you've got 3 tax years where you can have ISAs as they are. From 2027, you're going to have to just have that capped at 12 grand or start considering using the investment portion as well.
What type of guardrails would you have wanted in there?
They are doing this, so I'll try to answer your question as succinctly as possible, which is difficult with this type of thing. They are doing something enforced, but with pensions, right? But it's difficult for them to do it with ISAs. What they're trying to do, and this is, I genuinely think this is the reason why successive chancellors look at, I presume, a spreadsheet, and maybe it's huge and they just get a smaller one, and they look at how much that we spend as a country, and they go, that there's a big bit of the pie chart there. What's that one? And the guy goes, pensions. Yeah, but it's like hundreds of billions. That's a lot of money. What, can we not take a little bit from that? They're obsessed with it because the numbers are so big. So they are making changes with the auto enrollment schemes, which are the pension schemes that you have to join with employers, where a percentage of the big kind of what I call master trusts, the likes of Aviva, Royal London, Scottish Widows, where a proportion of funds in those master trusts must be invested in British companies. So they have managed to do that, and they're getting legislation for that from the pension side, but they haven't managed to find a right way to do it with ISAs. So from an ISA perspective, they would love each portfolio to have so much in the British economy. But of course, it's individual financial advice. How can they kind of enforce that? But they can do it with pensions, and that's what they're trying to do. Moving forwards, a lot of people out there with standard workplace schemes might think, well, I've seen my pension do okay. Why does the British government know better than Royal London or Scottish Widows or Stephen or Wealth Management how to manage my money? Maybe they want to have a look at their pensions a bit closer, because if they don't do anything, they'll be dragged along there because that's the way legislation's going. They could opt out, of course, but by default, that's what the government's going to do.
Right, we're going to stay with pensions though, because we have seen changes to the pension system, as you were saying, that they've brought in rules that are going to make you go certain ways to do certain things. State pension rising as well in April, 4.8% rise there. Full new state pension likely taxable from 2027.
So that was the bit I was talking about just before, about those fiscal drags and the amount you can earn before you pay tax. So historically, the personal allowance, your personal allowance was allowed to be 12,570. It's still the case until a few years' time. But forever, since Pussy was a kitten, the level at which you receive your state pension was always less than that personal allowance. But now the pension's continuing to rise, but this threshold's staying the same. So at some point in this next tax year, the state pension rises, and you'll be in a position where a nana aged 87 who's only got the state pension will technically have to pay tax. And that's the first time ever that's happened. So that's how, I mean, Rachel Reeves was on just after the budget. I think it was Martin Lewis who she was talking to. So she said, yeah, with that example of Elsie having to pay tax for the first time, she won't have to. But when pressed to say how that would happen, she's like, well, we'll worry about that later. So technically it's the case. How it's going to come about, nobody's kind of bothered to work that far ahead yet.
Right, well, that's all thoroughly depressing. Let's move on to how the politics looks going into this year. Huge elections, local elections in the UK coming up in May time. What we are starting to see is, well, the campaign is really underway for those elections. We're seeing the Labour Party and the Conservative Party seemingly both desperate to shift the debate onto cost of living.
Yeah.
Because they want that debate away from migration, because they know on cost of living they can try and score points against one another. On migration, they're having to deal with reform. So really, from the money angle, cost of living isn't just prices, it's taxes, it's the threshold that we spoke about for those taxes, the allowances, the fiscal drag, budget decisions shape politics long before elections do, really, Stephen, but they also shape our finances. So where has this left us? We've mentioned resets from Keir Starmer. What would be something that he could announce, that is in his gift to announce? What could he announce that would get people on side in cost of living terms?
He's desperate. I mean, I watched Prime Minister's Questions today, and there was another debacle. But he's desperate to say that, we're giving you £150 off your electricity bill, and that is a lot of money over the whole country. But when life's already expensive, £150 divided by 12 into your electricity bill in a year and a half's time, cost of living is a way people feel. And I think that's a lot to do with what I talk about is perception versus reality. The reality might be something completely different. So I said there, the top 100 companies in the UK have gone through, at least this is a story in itself, has gone through 10,000, the 10,000 mark on the FTSE for the first time ever. And I think that's a click. It's still there now. That's a news story. But do people on the street care? Not really. It's still expensive to go and buy a loaf of bread. So I think that the thing that Keir Starmer's struggling to as well is there's certain variables that he's being told things are getting better, but where people feel and perception really isn't. And I think that's going into the local elections. They're not going to forget. The only thing in people's gift voters is to say, I want something different. What's Keir Starmer got? I don't know, actually, in terms of money. It's so tight. I don't think he has got anything prior to May. The plan. I don't think there's a plan. I'll have a look. I don't think there's a plan for a spring statement of any particular time. So this is where they're at now.
So what you're saying there is there isn't anything that Keir Starmer can offer. People are a bit downhearted. Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to our podcast. We're here to make you feel good about yourself. But no, what we won't do is shy away from those issues. When it is bad, we'll tell you it's bad.
You call it the way you see it. I don't know what he could do in terms of pulling rabbits out of the hat, because the public finances are so tight that the things he thought was going to fix things 2 months ago haven't happened yet, and people have forgotten about them. Perception is reality. People feel it's bad, so it's bad. People telling things are getting better isn't going to make you feel better.
Well, that is all thoroughly depressing for a first episode, really, isn't it? Could have found something good to go for.
Could there be a meeting with me that wasn't depressing? That's successful.
Give over, Stephen. Way to sell it. Way to sell the podcast. Yes, we will be here every single week where you found us, because there's plenty for us to talk about, because those big stories rarely hit people's finances straight away. That pressure, as we've heard, it builds quietly through prices, taxes. How that policy impacts people doesn't always make the headlines immediately.
Now, understanding how these pieces connect won't make you feel better or richer overnight, but it could make you feel a bit calmer and a bit better prepared. So do remember, of course, all of these are financial education. It's absolutely not financial advice.
This is how money really works, and that was our show. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple. You can also keep in touch with us on Instagram, TikTok, and all those other good places. The links to where to find us are in the show notes. There you'll also see the contact details for Stephen Hope Wealth. If you would like to make an appointment with Stephen in person, we'll see you all next week. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, there we go. Have we got a podcast?